Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Zesty Dietitian podcast. I'm your host, Mackenzie Caldwell, registered dietitian nutritionist. In today's episode, we are going to be diving into a topic that's definitely nuanced and a little bit overwhelming, and that is endocrine disrupting chemicals. As you're listening to this podcast, I want you to know that our intention is to help you feel informed and empowered and not scared, and that this is not something that is meant to overwhelm you. We want to leave you with some practical tips to help reduce your exposure to these harmful chemicals, and also know that there is a growing body of literature showing us what some of these chemicals can do, but also a lot of lack of research and a lot of fear mongering that exists out there, especially on the internet. So that said, a little bit more about our guest today. Our guest is Judy Simon. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist who focuses on reproductive health. As the founder of Mind Body Nutrition, she integrates a comprehensive approach that combines nutrition therapy, mindfulness, and intuitive eating to help individuals improve their health and fertility. Judy specializes in fertility, PCOS, eating disorders, and weight-inclusive healthcare. Her work emphasizes a non-judgmental, inclusive approach to health, and she's the co-founder of the Food For Fertility program. In addition, Judy co-authored Getting to Baby, a Food-First Fertility Plan to improve your odds and shorten your time to pregnancy, which offers a science-backed, nutrition-centered approach to fertility. So, without further ado, here is episode 10. Hello, Judy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Hi, Mackenzie. I'm so happy to be here. We really share a love of all things fertility and prenatal health, reproductive health. So it's always fun when we get together and talk and share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've told you this before, but you are my dietitian hero. I remember seeing you speak at Fancy in like 2015. Maybe 26. No, I wasn't.
Did a few
it must have been
times.
2016 or 17.
Yeah. I think I've had 3 trips to that rodeo to Fancy and lots of talks. And I was one of those early dietitians out there as a pioneer saying, hey, we can help folks who are trying to conceive, trying to have healthy pregnancies, and that we have the tools and knowledge and experience to help them. So it's been great.
Yeah, and I really admire you for that, and I think it's you've been such an inspiration. So I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. We've got so much to talk about with nutrition and lifestyle, endocrine disruptors. So, yeah, let's jump into it. My first question is something that I ask all of my patients, and that is, what are some of your favorite foods?
You know, that's so funny. I was thinking about that because I love food, and I'll tell you what my breakfast was today. It's going to sound really crazy. But I love breakfast, okay? Like, we talk about it before we go to bed at night. What do we have for breakfast? And I made up this recipe for pumpkin pancakes, and I put pecans in them. And today we had some batter left over. We had a blueberry. So if you asked me this morning, homemade pumpkin, oat, blueberry, pecan pancakes were amazing. It just depends if I'm loving sweet or savory. And I really love to highlight seasonal veggies. And I just posted a little video. I went out to my garden. I found all this Swiss chard that had wintered over, and I just like snapped it up. I'm like, oh, I'm going to saute you with some garlic and salt. So I really love the perk and the brightness of fresh veggies in any meal that I'm eating. So that's what I'm into today.
Love that. I love that. And what are some of your favorite ways to move your body?
Oh, that's a good question. I am a combo. I love to walk, which I do regularly. I really love the energy of group classes. And I'm lucky I belong to kind of a community gym. And my goal, I try to get to yoga twice a week, Thursday night, Sunday morning, different yoga teachers. And I love to go to functional fitness core classes. And when I'm consistent, which I really have been this winter, I'm sleeping so well. Yeah. I'm feeling so much stronger and more flexible. So yeah, I like group classes a lot. And then this week I'm also going to get to go cross country skiing. So that's another thing I really enjoy doing.
That's so fun. I've never done that before.
Love to move.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on the group classes. I cannot work out at home alone. I will if I have to.
I will, but it's not as fun.
Yeah. And you mentioned, and we just talked about how kind of you're one of the pioneers of fertility nutrition. how did you decide to get into fertility nutrition? How did you decide to become a fertility
Yeah, well, there's a
focused
couple of
dietitian?
paths. I had my own lived experience where decades ago, I'm a little older than you, I really had trouble conceiving. And I had this dream. I was a healthy young woman. I wanted to start having babies at 30. Well, it was already 32, and I had over 5 years of unexplained infertility. And it wasn't really a thing back then. You went to your OBGYN, they could offer you, stimulation drugs like Clomid. And I had friends that did that and ended up with triplets. I'm like, no, not going that path. And it wasn't even IVF back then. So I went on my own journey, had some help with assisted reproductive technology. And having to do with exposures to toxins, which I know we're going to talk about today, I always wonder why, when I moved from the Midwest where I couldn't conceive, I could conceive naturally when I moved to a different region. And I still wonder, because everything like else was okay with us and I was older, why could I conceive naturally when I lived in a different region? And with the thousands of, endocrine disruptors that exist, I really wonder if there was something I was being exposed to. I don't
Yeah.
know. I still don't know. So number one was my own path of fertility. And then when I came back, I took a little time off with my kiddos. And when I came back to clinical work, working at the wonderful University of Washington Medical Center, I introduced me to PCOS. This was like early 2000s, and I was seeing one woman after another that would go off birth control. Maybe they were late 20s. They wanted to get off the pill. They went on it because they had irregular cycles. They were gaining unexplained weight, hirsutism, all those side effects that can happen in PCOS. So I immediately teamed up with a reproductive endocrinologist and endocrinologist on what the heck is PCOS? Come teach the dietitians. And that was really the beginning of it over 20 years ago. They said, hey, we want to work with you because insulin resistance, the research was coming out. So my PCOS journey led me to all things fertility. So I think what I really had to do, since I didn't learn it in my training, was I had to join all the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. I had to really work with the repro endos, the OBGYNs, and make those connections. I was already involved in maternal health and knew all that. I knew preconception health was important, but now I was putting it in the framework as why is it difficult for some folks to conceive? So that led to working with my co-author, Angela Thayer, reproductive endocrinologist, and we developed the Food for Fertility classes for 12 years. And it's why we wrote our book. We took the whole lifestyle class and we put it in a book so everybody could have access to it. It's kind of the capstone of my career, Mackenzie, to be really honest. I know I'm giving you a long answer, but it really, you asked what led me on my journey. So I still see patients for fertility probably every day between my private practice and my University of Washington practice. And you can be sure that when I teach the GCPD or the graduate interns in our master's degree program, they learn about PCOS and they learn about fertility on a public health level and a clinical level. That I think it's really important that we are, and I think you're doing this in your practice because you have the most educational social media posts, is we're educating our colleagues. We're educating our colleagues, not just our, potential clients or the public, to have accurate information on fertility. So that's why I absolutely love your social media, and you're on my list for my patients. Okay, this is good stuff. She really is just trying to help in your team, and I think that that's really important to have that solid information out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And that's awesome that you were kind of able to see and identify that kind of community nutrition problem and then address it. That's dietitian goals. That's so cool.
It's our goals, right? We want to have access to care. You know that fertility treatment is very expensive. It's not covered by insurance in most states. So how do we help people that just say, I don't have the money for IVF? What can I do? We don't want to leave them out. It's so discriminatory. I mean, seriously, when it comes to fertility treatments, what can we do to help whatever treatment they can't afford, or how can we help them possibly not have to have treatment?
Right. Yep. Either not have to have treatment or for folks for religious reasons who choose not to, and or even if you do choose to pursue IVF, what does the evidence say can support your journey? How can we kind of cross our T's, dot our I's, check all of our boxes, and also understand how kind of some of the stuff we do right now might be interventions that you could take with you through the rest of your life. I always like to talk about like movement. Like, let's imagine you as, like, yes, you're like 32 and trying to conceive right now, but what might your life look like when you're 85? What kind of old person do you want to be? And how can we kind of think about incorporating nutrition as a form of self-care now? Yes, there's these little things that are specific to fertility, but a lot of what we're going to do, I want you to be able to take with you forever.
And I really think that helps to sell it. You know, when we do our marketing, women are overwhelmed in men, what they have to do, what they're being told to do with fertility. We want to be really practical. So even when I work with a surrogate, that means a woman who is carrying someone else's baby because, the mom can't carry the baby. I talk to them not about just the benefits of nutrition for the baby, but their health. We want them to be healthy, and then that's always a big buy-in. And when we talk a little bit about toxins today, I just went to this amazing talk in American Society of Reproductive Medicine. When I started learning more about toxins, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and how they impacted fertility, I kind of like thought about it in the fertility world. Like, I thought about it for me too, even though I was past that, but that was more my razor focus. And listening to this talk, this researcher talked about perimenopause and menopause, and she talked about everything with endocrine disruptors. Oh my gosh, it has an impact on a woman's her likelihood of having metabolic disease. You know, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all from this exposure. So I tell women when I and couples, when I talk about exposures, I go, this is for your health. Yes, right now I'm concerned about your gametes, your sperm, you know, your eggs, your reproductive organs, your reproductive hormones. But long term, and I don't know, a lot of my fertility patients are in their 40s, so they're like a turn from perimenopause anyways.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's the next thing on the highway. So I feel like, no, these are lifetime things that can have immediate benefits for these folks and for generations to come. Like, we don't know why women develop PCOS, and one theory that's being looked at is possible exposure to endocrine disruptors during pregnancy may switch some of those genes. So we don't know, but we know there's nothing that great about them. So, you know, limiting exposure is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without
and
fear.
Now that, 1000%. And I have some like specific questions to ask you.
Okay.
One of the reasons that I think when we were brainstorming topics for this podcast specifically, one of the reasons that the idea of talking about endocrine disruptors was such, like, it stood out to me is because the Trump administration is rolling back a Biden program that was going to help regulate the polyfluorinated substances in water. And this is something, at least at the county level here in Mecklenburg County in North Carolina, where Charlotte is. When I check our water report, we get it in the mail. You better bet I'm going to open that thing. I want to see how our water quality is. And they do report on the PFAS, but I don't know if that's a thing across the United States. I don't know if that's a state level regulation thing or if it's federally mandated by county. But regardless, the fact that that is being rolled back is a disservice to Americans.
Absolutely. I think we deserve to know what's in our drinking water.
Yeah.
And you're getting a completely different source. I've got a great source from the Pacific Northwest. That doesn't mean things are going to change in the future, you know.
Right.
And so I think it's important to know, and I think labeling is important, and we don't really have that here. It's kind of a buyer beware, you're on your own. And there's a lot of apps and groups that are making claims that really cherry pick some of the science. So some people go, oh, I just use this app. And I'm like, so I just try to keep it as simple as possible. And I think more folks are aware of this, because a lot of times by the time I talk to someone who's on their second round of IVF, they're like, we're good to go on this. I go, excellent. But I talk about women who just see me for PCOS long before they're even thinking about starting a family. And I talk to them.
Yeah.
Right. I talk to them, you know, now I talk to my kids who are, you know, 30 and 31 who, you know, I hope will have kids one day. But, you know, I talk to them now about how important that is from their health. And I'm excited to share some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's a lot of information, but we overall hear so much buzz about food additives and pesticides and all different types of endocrine disruptors, especially from these apps and influencers. And I've noticed that it specifically is particularly stressful for my clients with IVF. It just feels like so much is on the line for them. So my first question is, should we really be concerned about artificial colors and flavors in our food?
Not in the context of fertility, because there's absolutely no data that they have any impact on fertility, right? So I think it's a personal choice. I think it's down to 90% are just 3 different colors. And, different government agencies have said it's safe. There's a few weak studies with ADHD in kids. They're really small. But I've seen no context in fertility. And I do attend, anytime there's an environmental talk or article in the fertility world, I'm always up on watching, seeing that, haven't seen anything on that. And when you talk about food additives beyond colors, that's a bigger conversation. And I'll just say that we have some limited data. There's that whole thing of, is it a processed food? Is it an ultra processed food, right? And at the end of the day, I go, what is the food? Instead of just like grouping them into it, because there's some confusion on some of the classification. So if I have a patient that's, eating like all packaged food, and seriously, it's got so much supplements and different things into it, I'm more concerned that they're not eating whole food and they're not getting antioxidants and fibers and things like that. And, we do have some data on some of the diets, the Christopher Gardner data out of, I think is UCSF, where they found that patients that had a higher percentage of calories from these ultra processed foods tended to have some health implications. That has my eye, and we talk about it in our book, Getting to Baby, like try to move more towards minimally processed foods. I don't think there's any of us that are living a life that doesn't have a bag or a box in our cabinet. But there's a big difference, and I put some fun things to bring today, like garbanzo beans in a Tetra box. But if I look what's in there, if I look at the ingredients, it's got organic garbanzo beans and water. Okay. Right. So I hate when people say don't eat anything in a box. I'm like, it's beans and water. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
I do cook my beans in the Instant Pot because it takes 45 minutes and I love to do that. But I got lots of those boxes when I want to do a quick recipe. Last week it was tuna, white bean, red onion. And I had a packet of tuna. I had a box of white beans. I cut up a red onion. I made a salad in like 5 minutes.
Love that.
Yeah, some of it did come in boxes, but what's in the box that matters? Yeah. Because I see all these people, I'm more concerned about the people living off of their protein powders. And I'm like, what's in it?
Yeah.
Because they have had, Consumer Labs has found some heavy metal contamination in different protein powders. People think they're food, and they are not regulated by the FDA.
Right. No, they're supplements.
Right? Yeah, nor are supplements. And so, that this could be a whole other podcast to talk about supplements. But as you and I know, some of our patients aren't really depending on food. They're depending on a lot of these. They're eating protein powders, protein bars. They're just doing protein, a ton of supplements, very little food. I don't think they're well nourished. They're missing things. No. And they're getting too much of other things, other nutrients, which isn't always a good balance. But I'm getting off the topic a little bit. Yeah. But it's like, what's in your box? Of course, I have sourdough bread. I don't make my bread from scratch. I wish I had time, I don't have the skill level either, but,
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to hear more about why you choose the box over the can for your beans. But
I will.
Overall, to kind of sum that up, there is not enough evidence to say that food colorings and flavors, artificial colors and flavors, have any impact on reproductive health outcomes. And if there is a connection between highly processed foods, ultra processed foods, and fertility outcomes, it may be more of an association between the amount of kind of fresh produce and whole foods in the eating pattern compared to the kind of highly processed foods. And there's a lot of things in the whole foods that we don't even know what they are. A lot of they're called phytochemicals.
Yes.
And antioxidants that might potentially lose their nutritional value by the time they make it to the package, but not all the time. So we want to kind of really focus more on adding in the whole foods versus cutting out the ultra processed foods.
And something I want to say, Mackenzie, I know you hear this all the time from your clients, your patients. I've never had a patient who eats all those ultra processed foods come in and tell me they feel great. They usually tell me their stomach hurts, they have some constipation, they're hardly getting fiber in their diet. But I do hear people all the time when they add in more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, tofu, eating more, food that's been minimally processed, tell me they have never felt better.
And we don't want to alienate anybody who feels like crap when they are eating a whole lot of whole foods, especially if you struggle with orthorexia.
Of course.
But that's why we do bring out these other kind of more processed foods that happen to also have a lot of nutritional value. And we also want to make the point that we do have room for fun foods.
Yes, we do.
The point of our work, whether you work with Judy or me or whoever, your dietitian should never make you feel scared of a box of Cheez-Its.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's how I feel about the whole subject with toxins. I once had a patient going on her Hail Mary last IVF in her 40s, and another provider had given her this really strict list on everything to avoid with endocrine disruptors. And she took 2 days off of work, and she threw everything out of her house. And she told me the entire time she did it, she felt guilt.
Oh.
So how could that be good?
Yeah.
How could that be good to have, and I have some patients and they'll bring back these lab values where it's all red and it says danger zone and they're barely pre-diabetic, like red, hot flames on their labs, danger zone. They go, I'm filled with inflammation. I'm like, oh my gosh, stop that. Fear mongering and all is never a good way, which is I like to ask my patients, are there some things that, have you heard about endocrine disruptors, and open the conversation and not make it a fearful one.
Yes, absolutely. And I also like to point out that when we're having this conversation, we have to recognize that it is impossible to completely avoid endocrine disruptors. They're in the air, the water, the soil.
Absolutely.
The biggest impact that we can make is our vote and advocating for environmental regulations.
Absolutely.
Period.
Because otherwise, in science, we need the science to continue on.
Yes,
we do. And I once was at sort of a debate at ASM a few years ago about just bisphenol A, kind of science on both sides. So currently, the regulations that we have, bisphenol A, one of the known endocrine disruptors, it's not allowed to be used in baby products, nipples and, for bottles and pacifiers. Once you grow up, you can be exposed to them all the time. There's no regulation on it. Even though we have some strong data, same thing with phthalates and some of the other things we're going to talk about is, no, these aren't, they're not, they don't even have to be labeled.
Yeah.
And so that's why we want to share easy ways that our listeners would be like, well, how the heck do you avoid them if you don't know where they are, right? You look at your water testing report. People don't realize they can ask for that information if it doesn't come on their bill. What's in the water? It's a great idea.
When I was not on the water bill, we get a yearly report from the county.
Okay. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, a yearly. And they probably have it available online through the county Department of Water. But the information that I got for my patients is directly from the EPA.
Interesting.
And that's how I decided, because I was getting overwhelmed. How do I know what information to share with my patients? I was like, you know what? Let me just see. What is the government saying? What do they know? And, again, this was before the current administration. I haven't double checked the EPA website lately, but there was information on endocrine disruptors directly from the EPA. And I was like, you know what? If the government is saying that these have an effect, I feel comfortable talking to my patients about these particular chemicals. Sure, there may be emerging research about additional ones that hasn't yet made it to the EPA website, but these are kind of actually feasible changes we potentially could make. So Anyways, our point is we want to raise awareness and not worry, because worry and
Absolutely.
fear doesn't actually
And,
help us.
and what I've learned over the years is that the half life of a lot of the endocrine disruptors, some of the BPA that you might get from canned food, or if you were heating, plastic in the microwave, which we recommend other, carriers for that instead, a lot of them have a half life of about 48 hours. So I tell a patient, if you're
Wow.
doing IVF next month, any little small thing you do, it's going to reduce your exposure. And that's all
Yeah.
we're asking you to try is try to reduce exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that means you use the vent fan over your gas stove
Yeah.
to reduce some of those particles in the air.
Sure.
If you happen to be, like, sadly have been in California when there were fires, or there's fires all over the country, and you're trying to conceive, wear an N95 mask when you go outside. Keep, have a HEPA filter. Now, and I always try to think of money. Not everybody has these expensive things, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, can get an air filter. That's what a lot of my friends in California did.
Yep.
After the fire, they were really worried about the particulates that they were exposed to. And we have seen, there has been research that shows like lower rates of conception when there's been wildfires and there's
Wow.
pollution. People
Yeah.
who live by expressways and have constant, if you live near an expressway, you want to make sure you have good air circulation,
Yeah.
in your home. Taking your shoes off and not bringing particulates in. So a lot of those practical things. And I always start off with, I ask my patients what they drink their beverages in, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do they
Mm-hmm.
drink them in? So I show them whether they're live, like stainless steel, you know, ceramic or glass. So I show them, and
Yep.
I
I
go,
got my
and
mason jar
if,
right here.
all right, yes, that's what I love to keep all my food in, my leftovers and all. And then what I share with them is, if you have to use one-time plastic use bottles, only drink out of them once, and then use them to water your plants and recycle them and all. You don't want to keep
Yeah.
using them,
Right.
and really try to reduce your dependence on them. So those are kind of easy ways. And that's why I always say I have a stainless steel container at every place of work and in my car, you know what I mean? So I
Yep.
can always refill those, right? Those are
Yep.
good. And then that goes over to like what you cook with, right? So
Mm-hmm.
teaching people that when they warm food up, people are using air fryers, using microwaves. Um, don't put plastics in the microwave.
Please stop putting plastic in the
I know, right?
microwave.
And they'll say like, I don't want to throw out my plastic. I go, that's okay to store dry things in and all,
Yeah.
but try to use glass, ceramic to put in, and you can also store in stainless steel. So trying to get people to make that change. So I'm not saying throw out all your Tupperware. I'm
No.
saying start to buy glass. So like the practical things, and then I tell them to look around in their kitchen, and is there anything where heat, like even some of the coffee makers and stuff, that you could reduce the heated plastic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
could you change to a pour over? Are there different ways you could do your coffee or tea that you could have that? Like, so I try to make it like super easy.
Yeah.
And I could ask you too. What do we think about organic foods? Because I'll have patients that come to me and they're like, Judy, I only eat organic, gluten free, dairy free,
Yeah.
matcha, like this higher level. And I'm like, okay, that's a choice,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of patients who can't afford organic, or it's not available, or it's coming from halfway across the world. It's coming from South America. And I don't know how much nutrition is left in that organic produce by the time my patient eats them. I do know if they bought frozen fruit like berries that were picked in the state of Washington at the, peak freshness,
Mm-hmm.
frozen, they're going to have great antioxidants, and they're going to, have a great, food to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to make a similar point that I've seen, like, maybe you've seen more studies, but I've seen one study showing that there was a minor increase in positive outcomes specifically for IVF patients who ate organic produce. But we have a crap ton of literature that just says eating more fruits and vegetables is
Is more
beneficial.
important. Yes.
Yes,
And even
exactly.
I know the folks that did the Earth study, and, they were
Mm-hmm.
asking people about pesticide exposure and all. And the data from that is not strong to support it, to staying away. So I don't even include it in my recommendations or when I talk about it. I tell people it is much more important that they're eating fruits, vegetables, whole grain.
Yep.
If you live somewhere where, like, if I go to the farmer's market, I'm going to support the local farmer and I'll probably pay more for organic. But I have that privilege. It doesn't mean a lot of times at the farmer's market, there's people who don't have, at least in my state, it may not meet the certification, but they'll say, we're not using, pesticides. And I think what people don't realize is pesticides are really, really regulated in this country. I mean, we get it, right? They are regulated. People don't realize that you can use some pesticides for organic produce are allowed, right? So that even when they check like the 1% that has some pesticide residue, it's so minimal. You would have to eat so much to have any impact. I feel like people are wasting their time worrying about that. And if they could just eat more seasonal, more local fruits and vegetables, or, I mean, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so we get local, but we get a lot from California. We really depend on California. And I'm thinking you're in a warmer area where you live, so you probably have more local produce, right? I don't know, where do you get your produce?
Yeah, we
Is it
do.
more local?
We do get some good local produce. North Carolina is actually one of the biggest exporters of sweet potatoes in the world, which is so cool.
I love sweet potatoes.
I know. They're so great. But I'm completely with you. And one point I like to make is that to be USDA certified organic, it costs a lot of money. So a lot of these small farms can't afford to get that certification. And some of them also potentially might actually just be spot treating their fields versus spraying the entire thing with pesticides. So even if they're like, no, we're technically not organic, but we do just spot treat versus spray the whole thing, that is not only potentially going to reduce your exposure to pesticides, which, like we just said, probably isn't that big a deal, especially if you wash your produce, but it's better for the environment and it's better for the farm workers.
Yes. And that's an important thing too. I mean, I do care about farm workers, but I do want people to know that things are highly regulated, how much pesticides they can use. And sometimes, I mean, my patients go to the store and they're like, wow, the organic asparagus, or grapes is a good example. Sometimes organic grapes are like, I don't know, $6.99 a pound. Okay, that means you weigh them and you spent $20 on grapes. Not everybody has that kind of, budget for grapes. Whereas, they may get, something that's domestic and it's, a fraction of the cost. When something's double, it is not always affordable. And I always kind of laugh, like sometimes I see ultra processed foods and they're organic. And then I look what's in it and it's like, well, if you like it, it's not a bundle of nutrition in this particular product. You know what I mean? You can find organic, I don't want to call it junk food, treats or things like that are really expensive. And you could probably make something for minimal effort that tastes better and is much more nutritious.
Or just buy the regular Oreo or whatever the heck it is.
Right. The one that you just really wanted. I know. Yeah. When you see the ones that are organic, people are like, well, they're organic cookies. I'm like, okay, whatever. Is there that much benefit for fertility? I would say no.
Right. Exactly. We want you to save your money where you can and put those funds towards other things that are actually going to be beneficial.
Oh, actually. Yeah. So I mentioned, like, I really care about, I guess, do you know that there's like 1,000 chemicals that are potentially endocrine disrupting? Like 1,000.
And can you actually maybe even pause there? Because we haven't even talked about what an endocrine disruptor even is.
I know. I'm jumping into like what you should do. Because I just don't, I feel like I always talk about this towards the end of my session when I'm running out of time. I'm like, okay, what's the most important highlights I want to do and ask them and, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So endocrine disruptors, I mean, really what they do, they can be human made, but they can also be something, there's natural things in the environment that they might mimic, block, or interfere with our body's hormones' normal jobs, okay? That could be anywhere from hormones produced by our brains, by our reproductive axis, by our thyroid, all over the place. So sometimes they're blocking the job, they're changing it. And I was just looking at an article last night in preparation, always want to learn something new.
Sure.
And exposures to these endocrine disruptors, like for a woman, oh my gosh, they can affect her ovaries, her uterus, placenta development, the fetus. the aging of the egg. I feel like everyone's talking about CoQ10, trying to, beef up the mitochondria. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you want to help stop ovarian aging and egg quality, let's reduce, these endocrine disruptors.
Right.
So there's like miscarriage, there's so many areas. And then on the male side, sperm production can definitely be impacted. So you're not going to pick up a label of hand sanitizer, rarely, where it's going to say this does not have endocrine disruptors, right? And probably I try to focus on the biggest bang for the buck, Mackenzie, depending on how much time I have in a talk with a patient. So I talk about bisphenol A, which has been around over 100 years, and it is a weak, estrogen-like product that hardens plastic, right? What research has shown first in animals, that bisphenol A is an endocrine disruptor. It can impact fertility, but it's also in our system, and we pass it on to like 3 generations, is what we've been seeing in animal models too. So I try to say, okay, what are the easiest ways we can reduce exposure with bisphenol A? So it's also used as a resin in the lining of cans. So you've probably seen it sometimes on a can. My patients will go, oh, I get that canned beans and it says no BPA. Well, sadly, because this isn't a regulated claim, right? You could say whatever you want. They could have used a different bisphenol, which could also have the same impact. So what do we do if it's in the lining of cans? I do tell people, I have canned goods, will confess, I have canned goods. If you have some canned goods and it's like beans or lentils, you could rinse them, and just that would reduce the exposure, right? If possible, and I'm not like harping any certain brands, I often try to tell my patients, if you can find some of the things that you would normally use in a can, if you happen to see them, same price, in a Tetra box, which is recyclable, just like a can is, or like, I didn't bring it with, but I buy like tuna in the packets. And then you don't have the can. And they're not expensive, right? So that's something that I look for. Of course, a lot of tomato products you can get in glass jars. But lately I've been finding tomato paste, one of my favorite things, in little glass jars, which is kind of nice because you can take out what you need.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love when I can find it in a jar. It's so much
Right.
easier.
So that's the way. So with BPA, we can try to reduce canned goods when possible. Okay. Not like, I got to throw out the cans. Don't throw out the cans. You can use them. And then this is kind of crazy, but do you know that the ink on your receipts has BPA, the thermal process? Now, we happen to have a co-op by us that uses a vegetable product. So a lot of times I just say, email me the receipt, or if I don't really need the receipt, I don't take it, or I have them throw it in the bag. Do you know what I mean? But that's the source of BPA. So the plastics, and then the next big one is phthalates, which actually starts with a pH, but you drop it, right?
Oh, you drop it. I can never pronounce it. I'm always like...
You're like, phthalates, just phthalates. Just drop the pH. I don't know why they do
phthalates. Okay.
Right. So the easy way, so really those are often, they are found in plastics, but also the big place where we could make a difference is they're the added scents and fragrances in all our cleaning products, our skincare products, right? And they're not going to be labeled most of the time, but they do have to label ingredients such as a scent. So I want to give you an example that I saved from the COVID days. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you know how Purell was all over? With this particular Purell, like at first when I grabbed it, I go, oh, fresh botanicals. That sounds nice. It's clear. And then when I brought it back to my office, it actually took a minute to read it, but it didn't say that it was phthalate free. And as soon as I read it, the ingredients were fragrance and perfume. So wonk on that one, right? Yeah. So then I said, I'm going to make sure I'm really careful. So I went and I bought, I don't even know what it is, but I love this hand sanitizer because it said it was fragrance-free hand sanitizer. And they even went on to say no parabens, no mineral oil, no phthalates, no artificial dyes. But regardless of what they said, I read the ingredients because I wanted to really find out, did they have any added fragrances, and they didn't.
Yep.
Okay. So the trick is, I tell everyone, as you're replacing your laundry detergent or your skincare products, I don't want people throwing it out. What can
Right.
you change to? Can you get that brand unscented? And
Hmm.
honestly, sometimes you have to go on the website for your skincare. But there's a story in Getting to Baby. Gosh, I forget what her name is in the book. Or in the Disruptor chapter, and she was they were one of my favorite couples, and she was from South America with this beautiful accent and really long, gorgeous hair.
Hmm.
And they had a failed IVF. They had one embryo left, Mackenzie, and they wanted to know everything they could do.
Hmm.
Well, we worked on more fish, we worked on all the fruit stuff, more vegetables. But I told her, okay, for your next visit, I want you to bring all your skincare products, right? The table was full. I didn't know you could put so many products in your hair and on your skin, but she really liked them. And everyone they like had a fragrance. They all like were But her husband was so sweet. He goes, "Listen, we're going to go over to Ulta or wherever, and I'm going to help you find replacements, for this next cycle, and they went on and they had a healthy baby. Okay, that's an N
Yeah.
of one, but I tell you, IVF is not 100%. You want
Right.
everything on your side. And I said, in a month's time, you can really reduce your exposure. She'd been working on diet for a few months, which was a
Hmm.
big deal for her, but really that last step, and that's why I like sharing her story in our book, because we have a little disruptor story, because I don't like to use the word toxin, like what disrupts, right?
Right.
So the phthalates, the other really fun thing I have, and I'd be happy to share it with you for listeners, is my town where I live, Redmond, Washington, and they, as part of their hazardous waste management program, because they're trying to reduce chemicals, going like into our rivers and into our lakes,
Hmm.
right? So they have this handy 6 recipes. Make your own floor cleaner. Make your own drain cleaner. Make
Oh,
your own
that's
toilet
awesome.
bowl cleaner. Okay, and you want to know what they're all made of? So cheap. Okay, water. Okay, white vinegar, baking soda, and just gentle liquid soap, and just get a soap. Okay. So, for example, if you wanted to buy a window and mirror cleaner, you could make it with a half a cup of white vinegar, a spray bottle, and then fill it with warm water and use like your microfibers or a lint-free cloth or newspaper.
Hmm.
Okay, this will save you so much money. So much
And
money.
I've used
So
that. The what have I done? I think I've done a mixture of. Oh, I use it for pet accidents. A mixture of dish
oh
soap,
yeah.
water, and
You have a
vinegar.
doggy. Yes, you
Yep,
need
and that
that.
works well. I do want to point out that if you mix vinegar and baking soda, it's just going to make water.
Vinegar and
Baking
oh,
soda.
baking soda. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. So that's why like the drain cleaner, very good directions. First you pour a half a cup of baking soda down the drain. That's first. Then you
Oh,
pour the white vinegar down the
okay.
drain. You wait a few minutes and then you add boiling water. So there is a process. It's like that little
Oh.
science experiment, right? When it blows up and all.
Gotcha. But I
But
do love
yes.
cleaning my sink with just
Yeah.
a little bit of dish soap and
Yep.
baking soda.
Yep.
And that like
Yep.
really, it's like it acts like a little scrub.
And you can buy
That's great.
giant bags of baking soda
They're
at
so
some of the
cheap.
big box places. So cheap. So you're going to save money so that you can buy more fruits and vegetables and fish. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Save money here. And your cleaning products, those are very personal, like you're personal. So that's why I tell people look at what you have, look at the brands you love. And I hate to say store names, but there are some stores like the co-op I go to, or like I'm just going to say because I just know what's in my
Sure.
community, like Whole Foods, where you're more likely to find makeup and cosmetics and
Hmm.
cleaning products that they don't use, a lot of these endocrine disruptors. And then you can learn names and maybe buy them somewhere else. But if you even Google and you look up like makeups without phthalates and all, you'll start finding brands. And honestly, a lot of the big popular brands, they're really shifting.
Yep,
If
they
you
are.
ask for it as a consumer, if you ask for it, so I don't use a lot, as you can tell, a lot of makeup, but what I do use, I like to make sure that it's things, and then I just stick with the products that I know. But
Hmm.
things change. So that means getting away from using perfumes and things, but you can use like a natural scents, like a lavender, things like that. So trying to go with some of the things
Yeah.
that might make you
And
smell.
there's now a lot of quote unquote clean fragrances on the market
Hmm.
now too. And I found a couple that I have really liked. The brand Fleur, Sniff. I think the brand
Oh,
is
and
just
they're
called
not
Clean.
using phthalates
They're
to
not using
have that
phthalates. They're
as a
using
botanical.
exactly.
So while we're talking about cooking, we should talk about PFAS and what you
Yes,
cook with.
please.
What's your favorite cookware? Then I'll tell you mine.
My cast iron skillet is my favorite.
Me too.
But I also have I have a big stock pot, stainless steel stock pot that I got from my mother from like the 90s that she just wasn't using anymore. And then I recently bought a smaller I did have a non-stick one before I learned all this, and I was like, all right, it's time to get rid of it, and I just got a stainless steel stock pot.
Toss the non-sticks. I know they're really inexpensive, but do you know how much a large iron 9-inch pan is? It's like not $12. On sale. How much?
Like, maybe not 12, maybe 20.
Yeah, about 20, and often they're on sale.
Yep.
So I have that's the one my go-to. That's what I made my pumpkin pancakes in this morning. And then I bought a giant one because sometimes I have things that need room. Like I tend to prep meals. Like I might make, 6 chicken thighs or something, like for 3 meals or whatever. So sometimes I like that bigger one.
Yeah.
I have a griddle that's cast iron. I also have stainless steel, but I'm really careful about the cookware. And then talking about utensils, trying to use stainless steel. I use that bamboo ones now because they're easy to wash, and I tend to use wood and bamboo cutting boards, but I'm making sure that they're clean, soap and water. But those black, really cheap plastic ones that are like leaching into your food, really not recommended.
Yeah. Yeah. And a plus with the cast iron cookware is that it actually, if it's not the coated kind, like the ceramic coated kind, if it's just like the plain cast iron, it infuses your food with iron, which is a really great way to...
It really does. And they're easy to clean up, and you're not even really supposed to use much soap or anything like that.
And I figured out that that's a myth. There's a video from some information from Lodge Cast Iron website. They have,
what did they say?
Basically, way back when, soap used to have lye in it. And that is too much for cast iron.
Yeah.
But soap doesn't have lye in it anymore. And so Dawn dish soap even is gentle enough. It's totally fine.
I just use a drop. I find that if I clean it right away, it cleans really well. And I just love the evenness of cooking. Mm-hmm. You'll get that with some of the, other types of, but don't go for the $5 pan or some of those things. It's really worth it to invest in cookware that's going to be safe for you to eat and you'll keep it forever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good. And so far, silicone, from what we know, is okay. As far, because we do want to use spatulas and stuff when we're giving up our plastic, and using that's pretty heat sensitive and all too. So I think that just knowing kind of the basics with don't heat things up with plastics and heat when you can avoid it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the final thing that I like to recommend is dusting and vacuuming. House dust is a big source of endocrine disruptors, and just that is a simple thing that you can check off your list. Say, oh, good, I already do that. It's not like I'm doing nothing. Or you could say, okay, I could probably do a better job of vacuuming my home. Okay, that's a simple thing that we can do.
Yeah, even a microfiber cloth, you can use. You don't have to spray a lot of stuff on your stuff. Nope. Even just using a microfiber cloth, keeping those surfaces clean. So cleaning, and then taking your shoes off when you walk in the house, putting on your slippers or something like that. You won't track all that dirt in. That can really, make a difference too. So it's amazing. We've gone from house cleaning tips and how they help your fertility, but they help your health, and everything that improves your health improves your fertility.
Yes.
Right? The healthier you are, you have better odds. But just think about this endocrine stuff is something not to scare you, but just to say you can decrease your exposure. And one last fun fact is in the Earth study that looked at what role did environmental risk factors and food play, in success of IVF. Mm-hmm. And I will say, as far as the food went, the women in the highest quartile of success, they ate food from all the food groups, right? They ate grains, and they ate, all these things, whole grains. They ate dairy and all, but they ate fish 3 times a week. They ate a lot of fruits and vegetables. They had adequate, B12, vitamin D. So they were really well nourished going into it. But they did find a relationship to those women and men who were eating tofu and soy products actually had less BPA in their bodies when they measured blood and urine. They saw.
My gosh, that's
and again, this is correlational.
It kind of phytoestrogens like helping with the
Yeah.
regulation of the BPA?
Yes, that
as
the
the endocrine-
phytoestrogens were actually helpful from eating tofu. So in our book, we recommend, hey, try to have not only lentils and legumes a few times a week, try introducing natural soy like tofu, tempeh, or soybeans also have that. At least it was a relationship. We don't have the exact study, but I don't know, it's still healthy. So I think, why not do that?
Absolutely.
So, I really hope our listeners, I think I'm even on my website going to post that, the 6 effective recipes, because I think that would be so helpful, not only recipes to eat, but recipes to clean with. I give them to everyone. I give them to my adult kids. I'm like, you guys, you don't have to buy all those products. Do this.
Yeah.
You'll save so much money.
Absolutely.
And your environment will be healthier. I mean, they really care,
We should say this too. I have a lot of my patients, especially that have particular cleaning products. I mean, they've tried the quote unquote cleaning products and are frustrated by them not working. Sometimes these ones you make at home work really, really well. Sometimes it might not do what you need it to do. You can also put on gloves, wear a mask, and just rinse the surface after you use that cleaning products. And if you're working in an environment that has a lot of exposure, personal
protect
protective
yourself.
equipment.
That's a really good point.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Judy. This has been awesome. And as always, you're such a wealth of knowledge and information. So we really appreciate it. Where can folks find you?
Well, they can find me at Instagram at Fertile Nutrition. I try to post and share podcasts like this, right? I try to really share some good information for fertility. On my website, mindbodynutrition.com. And then, of course, on my website, you'll learn about our book, Getting to Baby, which I want to say is available paperback, Kindle, and audio, and hopefully at your library. If it's not at your library, ask them to order it. We wrote this book to make it accessible to everyone.
And it is such a great book.
Thank you. And if you do read it or you've read it, please rate and review it. It helps us. And so, those are ways to get a hold of me. I work with women in the Pacific Northwest, but I often refer out to other areas, to other colleagues, if there's someone that I can't help. But love to help with resources and to help people on their family building journey.
Love that. Well, thank you again so much, Judy. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday and a fabulous week.
Thank you, Mackenzie. It's always a pleasure. Keep doing all the good work you do. It makes me so happy to see your passion.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.